Hi there, it's Lukasz for the Tech Travel Geeks, and today we're comparing two phones from Xiaomi's Redmi Note line, released in early 2021, the Redmi Note 90 5G and Redmi Note 10 Pro. We'll continue releasing more content on the Note 10 Pro and other devices in the near future, so if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the Tech Travel Geeks here on YouTube. Also, if you'd like to get much more detail on the Redmi Note 90 5G, we've recently released a full review of the device, so make sure to check it out. Let's start with the build and design. Both phones have glass fronts with Gorilla Glass 5 protection and have plastic frames. But there's some difference when it comes to the backs. The Redmi Note 90 has a plastic back with textured finish and water repellent coating, so it's best to avoid getting it too wet. On the other hand, the Redmi Note 10 Pro actually has a glass back, so it's more premium in this case. It's also IP53 dust and splash certified, so you should feel more comfortable in the rain. The design language is also quite different, with Note 90 5G with a centered round camera unit and a more vertical design, while the Note 10 Pro is designed more horizontally, so that it can be held more like a camera. This highlights the phone's focus on the camera performance, which we'll discuss later in the video. Interestingly, the Note 90 5G is slightly heavier than the Note 10 Pro. That's despite the fact that the Note 10 Pro is slightly longer and has a bigger screen. Speaking of the screens, they both use very different technologies. The Redmi Note 90 5G has an IPS LCD screen, popular in budget phones. From my experience, it's a really decent screen, quite bright at 450 nits and with good performance overall, great for consuming content. Conversely, the Note 10 Pro uses AMOLED technology used in higher-end phones. OLED screens are built with millions of light-emitting diodes, so each pixel has its own light source and can be switched off on demand, producing deeper blacks than LEDs. One of the benefits of the OLED screens is that they support the always-on mode, so you can see the time and battery status at all times. Both technologies have their pros and cons, but comparing them side by side, I prefer the Note 10 Pro's screen. It also offers further bells and whistles on top. The screen refresh rate is 120 Hz rather than 60 on the 9T, so the animations will be smoother, and it supports the HDR10 standard, so you'll be able to watch Netflix with HDR enabled. Both screens are Full HD, but the Note 10 Pro has a slightly larger aspect ratio of 20:9 versus 90's 19.5:9. Because of that, the screen is a bit longer or wider for more cinematic viewings. However, both should work great as media devices. Let's discuss the performance and specs now. Again, both are quite different. The Redmi Note 90 5G uses the MediaTek Dimensity 800U 5G chipset, which is a 7nm platform with 8 cores of up to 2.4 GHz. It also has a Mali G57 MC3 graphics card. As I discussed in the gaming test and full review of this phone, I found the performance to be surprisingly good, so we shouldn't treat the use of MediaTek chipsets as a disadvantage anymore. On the other hand, the Note 10 Pro uses the Qualcomm Snapdragon 732G chipset, which is also octa-core, but with speeds up to 2.3 GHz. It also has an Adreno 618 graphics card. It's the same chipset that we saw in Poco X3 NFC, so feel free to check Mateo's gaming video linked below. Both devices have quite comparable performance, so gaming on both should be a fun experience. However, I noticed that the Redmi Note 10 Pro offered more graphics options in Call of Duty Mobile, including very high graphics quality plus very high frame rate, or max frame rate with high graphics quality, as opposed to medium graphics quality and high frame rate on the Redmi Note 90 5G. Plus, it has a higher screen refresh rate, so some games might be displayed smoother. The Redmi Note 10 Pro also has either 6 or 8 GB of memory, while the Note 90 5G is limited to 4 GB, so you'll be able to download Fortnite using the Epic Store on the Note 10 Pro. Also, the game itself performs quite well. As to storage, they both come in 64 and 128 GB version, and both can be expanded with microSD cards, so you should have plenty of space available on both devices. Both of my review devices, courtesy of Me Community UK, came with a 128GB of storage, so no complaints from me. When it comes to battery life, both have very similar batteries. The Note 90 5G has a 5000 mAh battery, while the Note 10 Pro has a 5020 mAh battery. I can't say I noticed the 20 mAh improvement, but either way, both batteries give excellent performance. You will easily be able to keep using both phones for the whole day. Both phones come with fast charging as well, but while the Note 90 is rated at 18W, and according to Xiaomi it charges 33% in 30 minutes, the Note 10 Pro is rated at 33W, which is fantastic and allows you to top up to 59% in 30 minutes. That should definitely help out if you forget to charge your phone during the day. Unfortunately, neither of the phones comes with wireless charging, but both come with this brilliant animation when charging. You win some, you lose some. Let's now discuss the software experience. Since both devices are part of the same Redmi brand, both are using the same operating system, MIUI by Xiaomi, and the same software skin. However, underneath, the Redmi Note 90 is still based on Android 10 operating system, while the newer Note 10 Pro is using the latest Android 11 version. Both phones are expected to be upgraded to MIUI 12.5 in the next few months, so we can expect further updates. Otherwise, they're the same software experience, so we can expect a mature operating system with a lot of extra features, but also a number of third-party apps pre-installed on the device. Luckily, you can uninstall them if you don't use them, so they won't be cluttering your hard drive. Looking at the security patches, I actually had to update my notes twice. First when the Redmi Note 90 got the February 2021 update, and the second time when the Note 10 Pro got the March 2021 update just a couple of weeks after Google released it. That's really great to see. Speaking of security, both devices have very similar features when it comes to unlocking your device. Both have side-mounted fingerprint scanners, and both are great in my opinion. I actually prefer them over in-screen fingerprint scanners. Both devices also support basic face unlock, and both happen to work with masks, at least in my case, so that's good to see. Connectivity is one area where Redmi Note 90 5G has a big advantage over the Redmi Note 10 Pro. As the name suggests, it supports 5G connectivity, so it can be useful for you if you already live in a 5G area, or can be future-proof if you don't have 5G access near you just yet. The 10 Pro doesn't offer that functionality since the Snapdragon 732G doesn't have a 5G modem built in. It's not a big difference to me at the moment though, since 5G coverage is rather limited in Scotland. However, if you want to have 5G access, the 90 5G is the device to go with. If you don't care about 5G, you'll be happy to see that both devices support dual SIM cards and dual standby, so you'll be able to use both phones with two SIM cards, in case you need a work one and a personal one, for example. Other than that, both devices can support NFC, but whether you'll get it might depend on your market or region, so make sure to check that before you make a purchase decision. They also both support infrared ports, if that's something you want to use. When it comes to audio, both devices have stereo speakers, which is great to see in such low-cost devices. The Redmi Note 10 Pro has what I'd call a proper speaker, both at the top and bottom, so you can fully experience the stereo sound even without headphones. I found the quality to be quite good, especially for this class of device. The Redmi Note 90 also has stereo speakers, but the top speaker is more of a repurposed earpiece. Despite that, it still adds to the sound, so no complaints from me. Both ports also benefit from carriage ports, aka 3.5mm audio jacks. The Redmi Note 90 has it at the bottom, while the Note 10 Pro has it at the top, but either way, you'll be able to enjoy both wired and wireless headphones with those devices. One thing I noticed was that while both phones support FM radio, the sound quality on the Note 10 Pro wasn't as good for some reason. I experienced some cracking sounds and static distortion and sometimes lost the connection. I tested using a few stations and headphones or earphones, and also using the loudspeakers, but for some reason Redmi Note 90 had better reception. Could be my pre-release version though, so your mileage may vary. Finally, let's talk about my favorite part of any video, the camera comparison. I'll start with the simpler setup, the Redmi Note 90 5G. It has a single 48MP main camera with f1.8 aperture, which normally takes 12MP photos. There's also a 2MP macro camera and a depth sensor. There's no telephoto or ultra-wide, so your choices are quite limited here. The front-facing camera is 13MP. The Redmi Note 10 Pro on the other hand has a more complex camera setup. The main camera is a 108 megapixel Samsung one, but it also produces 12 megapixel photos combining 9 pixels into one. The macro camera is much better, getting upgraded to 5 megapixel, and it makes a big difference. Finally, there's an additional 8 megapixel ultra-wide lens, which is really great to have. The front-facing one is a 16 megapixel one. Comparing the photos side by side, you should definitely see a difference and improvement in the Note 10 Pro. There's much more details, photos are sharper, with more dynamic range and definitely more saturation, which you may or may not like. Similarly, in portrait mode there's better dynamic range and more detail. Overall, the new Samsung sensor, similar to ones used in latest Samsung flagships, makes a big difference. Both phones have night mode, but produce rather mixed results. So, as is common in more budget devices, don't expect the highest quality from low light or night photos in this price range. I love the aforementioned ultra-wide camera, which does allow you to see more and be more creative, so I'm really happy for that addition. The photos taken with it look great, so that's definitely a benefit. Similarly, the 5 megapixel macro camera is a big improvement compared to Note 90's 2 megapixel one. Just look at this purple flower with raindrops. It's too bad I don't have the equivalent 90 photo for that one. I'm not much of a selfie person, so I don't have too many to share, but the performance seems quite similar. The same when it comes to video, both record 4K in 30 frames per second, or actually variable frame rate, both only have image stabilization in just Full HD, and both support different slow motion modes, but nothing extraordinary here. However, I do like the videos produced on the Note 10 Pro, they look quite good. Overall, I've really been enjoying using both of those devices so far. At the time of writing, Redmi Note 90 starts at around £200, but you can sometimes find it cheaper at around £159. The UK price of the Redmi Note 10 Pro isn't officially known yet, but the recommended retail price is at $279, so we'll have to see when it's available. Which one you should choose will depend on your budget and on whether 5G is more important to you, or if you prefer a better camera experience and a nicer screen. I'm more of a camera guy, so you can guess my pick, but let us know in the comments below which phone you would prefer. Make sure to follow us on YouTube as we release more coverage on the Redmi Note 10 Pro and other devices, and as always, thanks for watching!